Manila, Reuters, when Filipino journalist Pia Ranada fell into a ditch and injured her leg on Election Day, May 9, 2016, the presidential candidate she was reporting on drove her to hospital and sat with her as she was treated. Less than 2 years later, that same man, by then in the midst of a bloody crackdown on drugs in which around 5,000 suspects were killed by police, attacked her during a national broadcast. "You are a Filipino who was allowed to abuse our country. In the name of the Holy Grail of press freedom," President Rodrigo Duterte said in a speech in January 2018, addressing Ms. Ranada directly. "You are not only throwing toilet paper, you are throwing shit at us." It was an explosive moment during a period of simmering tension between Ms. Ranada's news outlet, Rappler, and Mr. Duterte's administration, part of a chain of events that has drawn global concern for one of Southeast Asia's few remaining corners of relatively free and open press. Now facing multiple criminal charges against the site and its staff, the latest of which led to the arrest of its chief Maria Ressa on Friday, March 29, Rappler's management say they will not bow to what they see as government intimidation. Mr. Duterte's office says it has no grudge against Rappler and the government is not behind any of the cases against the news site and its staff. Reuters also has no evidence that Mr. Duterte was directly involved. Instead, interviews with Philippine officials and journalists show that close allies of Mr. Duterte coordinated the investigations against Rappler, and that Mr. Duterte was deeply angered by some of its reporting. A spokesman for Mr. Duterte's office said accusations his government was abusing or harassing Rappler were unreasonable. Making waves, Rappler executive editor Ms. Ressa, who previously held senior positions at United States broadcaster CNN, started Rappler with some associates on Facebook in 2011, and it became a news website in 2012. The name comes from combining rap and ripple, meaning to discuss and to make a wave. Ms. Ressa told Reuters she had found Mr. Duterte utterly refreshing when she interviewed him in the run-up to the 2016 election. Ms. Ressa added that her site's extensive coverage of Mr. Duterte's campaign allowed the septuagenarian to tap a young, social media-savvy voter base that helped a provincial city mayor secure an unlikely triumph over challenges from Manila's political establishment. Yet Mr. Duterte's victory was also founded on a pledge to eliminate crime and drugs, and allegations that the ensuing crackdown involved widespread extrajudicial executions by police quickly became a focus of Rappler's and other media outlets reporting on his presidency. Ms. Ressa said she believes their hard-hitting drug war reports, as well as stories accusing the administration of creating a social media ecosystem, where bloggers and internet trolls attack Mr. Duterte's opponents, quickly put them on a collision course with the president. The tide turned on Rappler in late 2016, when the government's top lawyer, Solicitor General Jose Calida, requested the Philippines Securities and Exchange Commission investigate the firm over alleged ownership violations. Mr. Calida is seen as a close ally of Mr. Duterte and helped manage his election campaign before being appointed Solicitor General in June 2016. But a source close to Mr. Duterte, who wished to remain anonymous, said Mr. Calida was not acting under orders from the president. Duterte doesn't really care about stories about the war on drugs, the source recounted. It was really Calida trying to gain brownie points. A spokesman for Mr. Calida's office said via email, "It is a serious misconception. He was focused on the president's opponents." The Office of the Solicitor General declined to comment on Rappler, citing ongoing legal proceedings. Ms. Ressa said, attacks by the government which started in 2016 led to board members leaving, a 45% drop in advertising revenue and a hefty pay cut for key management. Rappler now operates pending a review after its license was revoked for violating rules against foreigners owning stakes in media. Too close. Throughout 2017, Mr. Duterte stepped up criticism of certain press outlets, singling out Rappler as fake news and foreign-owned in public speeches. But Ms. Ranada, the Rappler reporter assigned to cover the president, said that on a personal level, their relationship was at a very good point during the same period. Indeed, Mr. Duterte and Ms. Ranada spent so much time together at a media Christmas party at the presidential palace in December 2017, her peers started to worry she was getting exclusive material, journalists and officials present said. That was just weeks before Mr. Duterte's expletive-laden rant about Ms. Ranada. What prompted that outburst, and changed the nature of Mr. Duterte's relationship with Rappler forever, according to the source close to the president, was a story about his closest aide Christopher Go. The article alleged Mr. Go had intervened in a military procurement deal by asking the Navy to look at a proposal by a South Korean firm. Mr. Go denied wrongdoing. The source said Mr. Duterte lost it over that story because it was too close to him. It was almost alleging that he was corrupt. In response to Reuters questions, a spokesman for Mr. Duterte's office, Mr. Martin Andana, said, "We do not have any personal issues with any reporter. However, any form of deliberate attempt to misinform the public is an attack to the efforts of the administration to deliver what is due to the Filipino people." Mr. Go declined to comment on the procurement deal, saying it had been investigated by the Philippine Senate and was case closed. He told Reuters he thought Rappler was very biased against me and the president. A day after Mr. Duterte's verbal attack, the Justice Minister at the time, Mr. Vitaliano Aguirre, a staunch loyalist and former university classmate of the president, issued a blanket order to the Philippines equivalent of the FBI, the National Bureau of Investigation, NBI, to probe Rappler over possible violation of the Constitution and laws. Rappler said the order, a copy of which was reviewed by Reuters, was a fishing expedition. Mr. Aguirre, who resigned in April 2018, denied this. Asked about his experience of Rappler during his time in office, Mr. Aguirre said in a text message, "My experience with Rappler, it is engaged in biased reporting against the Duterte administration. It would slant news reports every chance it gets. And it is not above reporting fake news." In the weeks that followed, a years-old libel case was resurrected against Rappler, a tax evasion probe was launched and both Ms. Ranada and Ms. Ressa were banned from the palace at the president's order. Mr. Andana, from Duterte's office, said the cases against Ms. Ressa and Rappler were bereft of any government participation, and that it was unreasonable to conclude that the administration is in any form harassing them or abusing its power. Dangerous message. Ms. Ressa was among a group of journalists named Time magazine's Person of the Year in December 2018 for defending free expression and the pursuit of truth and facts. Last month, she was served an arrest warrant live on television at her office over a libel case and had to spend a night at NBI's headquarters before she was released on bail. Ms. Ressa was arrested again on Friday, minutes after arriving at Manila airport from an overseas trip, on charges she and other Rappler executives violated foreign ownership rules. The Philippines has for a long time been a standard-bearer in the region for press freedom, said Mr. Sean Crispin, Southeast Asia representative for the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. If Duterte is able to get away with effectively silencing what has been one of his most prominent and credible media critics, that could send a message to the wider region that this is an attack you can get away with. Despite all the legal cases, verbal and online attacks, and financial troubles, Ms. Ressa remains defiant. "This is largely intimidation and this is part of the reason we are refusing to be intimidated," said Ms. Ressa. "We will fight and I do think we